Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ride and Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, today's video, kind of a sore subject for all of us this year. I know this past year was really rough with all the things that we had to let go. But sometimes we got to let these things go. But sometimes it's not over. And this is actually only the beginning. Sorry, no copyright.
Time to say goodbye.
So it might be time to say goodbye to some more things out there. Let's talk about it.
Now get ready. Here we go.
If this is your first time here, make sure you like, subscribe, do all that stuff downstairs. It does help me out, and I do appreciate it. All right, today's video. I've been through something like this before. I used to work for one of these corporations out there that when I hired on, they actually went through a bankruptcy. And I had to deal with all of that. Now I got to see that from the inside and lots of things changing hands and parks being sold off and everything else. It wasn't a pretty thing to go through. It's kind of what I see these days, though, but it's kind of what I see. So the merger between Six Flags and Cedar Fair happened, and now there's only Six Flags left over. And this is what I gather. It's like, okay, this is the same exact thing happening again. So I've got some experience with this. It's not great experience, but I do have experience with it. So I want to go over some things about getting rid of some of these old rides. So first we're going to talk about what makes a ride go away. Well, to answer that, we have to ask why we want to install a ride. Why do we want to install a new ride? Well, that's to get people through the front gate, right? If people keep coming into the park with static product in there, static by that I mean rides that they don't want to go on anymore because they've been done time and time and time again, that doesn't draw people into the front gate. That ride may have a long line to it. It may have some other issues in there going on where people want to come to that thing, but if it's not driving front gate sales, then it's useless to the park. So one of the big answers is, why do we get rid of rides? It's like, because they stop driving front gate sales. We can't say we're going to advertise this ride that's 20 years old and nobody goes to it anymore. That's not one of the things we can advertise on the websites, on social media and everything else and say, hey, come ride this ride that clearly nobody wants to go on. It's not a selling point. So parks are all about selling stuff. If they can't sell those things, then people will continue to not go to the park. They're not going to go to your park anymore. Why go to the park to run? This is nothing about Vekoma. I'm not bashing on Vekoma here. Why go to the park to ride a boomerang if they can go to any other park and ride a boomerang? Or if the boomerang only has 10 people in line for it ever, why would you keep that ride around if its maintenance costs and everything else aren't great? So eventually you start looking at getting rid of rides because they just don't make sense. Once this merger between Six Flags and Cedar Fair happened, they were now looking at this huge, massive pile of rides, which people are like, well, that's great. You've got all these rides here. You can look at it that way. But now they're looking at all these cloned rides inside. How many boomerangs do they have now? It's like, well, crap, they almost own all of them. It's like, well, do they need that? Does that add anything to the rides package? Well, not much. So what they do is they say, well, okay, well, how much debt do we have? How much does these rides cost to operate? And they start going through the parks that way, and they start looking at their in and out numbers, operation numbers, and everything else, and they start looking for spikes. They're like, okay, this park has this many rides, it costs this much to operate, it takes this many people, and we get this much back from revenue. It's like, all right, great. And then you go to some parks, and you find these little quirks in there. All right, your park to operate costs twice as much as every other park does to operate your size. Why is that? Well, we have this one ride that is this really cool, let's use Kingda Ka. Like, we have this Kingda Ka, it's really cool, it was world's fastest, world's tallest, and it's the most amazing thing out there, but it costs $1.5 million a year to keep running. Okay, so the park says, what are we getting out of that? Well, we can advertise that we have the world's tallest roller coaster. Well, until the one in Quidibia or wherever that place is, until that one opens up. Then they have the world's tallest. Okay, so that'll be off the table. Well, we can have the world's fastest? No, it's not the world's fastest anymore. Well, then you have to spin the marketing and you say, well, we have the US's tallest, fastest roller coaster. It's like, okay, what's that doing to our front gate sales? Well, nothing actually. Our front gate sales are in line with all the other parks. Really? Okay, so you're telling me you have a park where your front gate sales are normal compared to all the other parks. There's nothing fancy about it, yet we're going to spend an extra couple of million per year to keep this one ride running. And they go, well, yeah, because it's a record holder. And then Six Flags went there and said, we got one now just over here that's just a handful of feet shorter, and it's just a little bit slower. And guess what? If we removed your world record holder, then the other one is still the world record holder, still held by the same corporation. We didn't lose anything, except for now we saved $2 million a year off of that one particular ride, not to mention the amount of staffing and everything else it takes to run it. So one of the things they do is they go through and they look at the bottom line of what each ride costs to operate, and they look for spikes. This ride has this massive spike. It's like, okay. Then they also look at the other side of that. Let's look at guest complaints. It's like, what are some of the guest complaints? Well, what do guests complain most about on rides? I know enthusiasts are always like, well, this ride's rough, that ride's rough. Most guests don't complain about that. However, the number one guest complaint is, of course, we've all done this, the ride's not operating. Well, yeah, that's the number one guest complaint. That's also the number one guest complaint that'll fuel refunds at the front gate, because they will come up to that park. They bought a ticket online and they come to that park and they only went there for that one ride. And when they got to the front gate, that one ride was down. They have just invested their parking, whatever parking was, to get there. And now that one ride that they wanted to go on was down. Here's a little tip. If you ever plan on pulling this one, never ever go into the park and then try to pull that. That's one of those tips. If you go to a park and you arrived at this park only to ride Kingda Ka, right? And at the front gate, it says Kingda Ka will not be operating today. Then you go to guest relations and you try to get a refund at that point. Will they refund you? Probably not. They'll say, here's the ticket just for good for another day. But if you wanted to try to squeeze a refund out of a park, you cannot go into the park. As soon as you go into the park, your leveraging power is gone. You no longer have leveraging power for that particular refund. So if you ever do that, go to the front gate before you ever go into the park and try to get a refund. 9 times out of 10, they will not refund you parking, however. So you have just lost money for parking. But a lot of times the park will say, it's just a temporary thing. Can you come back a different day? If you're like I am most of the time, you'd be traveling. It's like, no, I can't come back a different day. I'm only here this one day. That's it. And then that would be grounds for a refund for a lot of people. But a lot of people go into the park, they enjoy other stuff inside the park, and then they start talking about, well, that ride's not running, I want to get a refund. It's like, nope, you've already enjoyed other stuff inside the park. You cannot get a refund. It's not going to happen. Parks won't do that. So they look at guest complaints. And now what rides get the most complaints? And they also graph those out as well. They simply just say, this ride has the most cost in it, and then this ride over here has the most complaints to it. Well, what are the most complaints based on? They do drill into those. They said, what are they based on? It's like, well, the ride wasn't operating. Typically, those spikes line up. Why does this ride have the most cost? Because it's constantly breaking, we're constantly fixing it, and it's very expensive to maintain. Why does it have the most guest complaints? Because it's constantly down, because it's constantly breaking, and we're constantly fixing it. It's like, okay, I'm sure there's been some mitigation to fix it in the past. What have we done? It's just these things. Kingda Ka is a great one. It is a massive, high-powered, extreme ride. Those big extreme rides like that run at the maximum operating edge of that envelope, you typically can't do anything to make them run better, because a lot of rides, what they do is simply just tone it down a little bit. Put some extra grease in the wheels, make it go slower, it stops tearing things up, run the lift a little bit slower. But when your whole job is to get over that top hat at the end of the ride, you can't tone that down at all. And if you have to go through 3 sets of cables a year and 16,000 gallons of hydraulic fluid a year, $300,000 worth of train rehab parts a year, then that is just the cost of operating that ride. And if that generates a lot of downtime, then that doesn't look good for it. So then they say, okay, well, what about staffing levels? Where do all of our staff go when the ride operates? So most rides take 2 to 3 to 4 people to operate, depending on how the park has this whole system laid out. So then they start going to these rides. It's like, okay, this needs 4 people to operate. This needs 3 people to operate. Little flat rides can operate with just 1 or 2 people. No big deal for those things. And then they come along and they go, there's a spike. There's 12 people operating this ride. It's like, holy crap, what type of ride is that? That's a rapids ride. We need all these people. We need all these loaders. We need all these unloaders. We need people watching the flume. We need people in remote spots around the ride to trigger e-stops. That's just the cost of operating that ride. Okay, what's our annual cost for this? It's like, it's not very high. We go through some minor stuff during the annual, a handful of bladders and boats and stuff like that. No big deal. Okay. And they're fine with that. It goes along. And then it comes along, then you got 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 3, and then come across this one. This one has 18 people operating it. Holy crap. What's that? That's Kingda Ka. I'm not saying it took 18 people to operate. I'm just giving an example, right? That's our Kingda Ka. Wait a minute. Can't we operate that with less people? Well, we can, but that throws a throughput down. And then what happens when you slow the throughput down? Well, then everyone starts complaining that they spent too long in line. So wait a minute, we're operating the ride with 18 people, and people complain that it's down all the time? And if we took some of those operators away, we would get even more complaints? Yep. All right. Tell me why I need to keep this ride at this point in time. And then the park better have a damn good reason why they need to keep that ride. But most parks, once you get through all the numbers and the cost of operating it, mixed with ride operators, its annual refurbishment, strain it might be putting on the park, maybe there's some intellectual property or something that they have to renew for rides that have theming and stuff to them. Once they start boiling that down, they start getting this graph. High maintenance cost, high downtime, lots of people to operate. What's it add to the front gate? Can we sell that at the front gate? Well, yes, we can as the world's tallest. Well, what happens if we don't? Honestly, it's not really going to affect the front gate. People are still going to come in one way or another. It's like, interesting. Let's get rid of that ride. Because we already have one just a little bit of ways. We got the same exact thing sitting over there. And that one's going to be a lot less to operate when that one gets up and running. That one will be a lot less to operate. It's not a good deal, but then they say, well, we've got this thing coming in. It's like, okay, all right, fine. So you have to look through the system and you have to find those spikes where everything is there. The cost of operating is through the roof. The cost of your downtime to it is through the roof. And maybe your throughput of people is very low. And your cost of operating it with your operators is very high. Lots of people to operate it. Hardly anybody goes through it. It costs a lot to maintain. All that stuff. Once you start hitting all those categories, that's ride removal territory. It's like, especially if something like the manufacturer doesn't exist for it anymore and doesn't back it. It's like, that means engineering is taking the brunt of all that, which means that's added cost. The engineering at parks is not free. They associate a value with those engineers. Even if they're their own engineers, there's still a value to it. It costs us this much time. Our engineers could have been working on other things. They had to stop and go work on that ride, which cost us this amount of money because it set back other projects. It's all relevant inside there. So go, okay, what are some other rides like that? I'm sure everyone right now is thinking about something in their head. Oh man, this at that park, that at that park. It doesn't have to be. You can look at it via map saturation too. You can say, well, we're going to take this boomerang out of this park. Why? Because it never has a line. Yeah, but its cost to maintain is kind of low and people like it, but we spend a lot of money, we spend a lot of time on maintenance each year. Well, we could use that maintenance time towards this other ride over here that we do want to keep. Well, yeah, that's true. And if you look at the map, there's 4 other boomerangs in the same state. That is not drawing anything to that park's bottom line. They can't sell that. They can't do anything. It's like, that was useless, right? Yeah, that was useless. It's like, okay, so that's where some of those rides are going to get cut out. It's like, we're going to lose more rides, right? We're going to see One of the things I'm watching Kingda Ka's Demolition, and I find it really interesting. This is saying something right here. This is painting an image. So back at Six Flags Magic Mountain, I used to go all the time. You have Lex Luthor's Drop of Doom hooked onto Superman the Escape. I can almost guarantee you Superman the Escape is getting shut down, right? They might have some parts to keep it running maybe for another year, but that thing is going to shut down. Now, when they shut that ride down, they have to continue to do all of its tracker and structure inspections in order to keep Lex Luthor's Drop of Doom running. Now, per the state of California, because I know about that, what they're going to do is they say, we're going to shut down Superman. And it's like, well, all of your track and structure is attached to another ride, which means that other ride has to be in full functioning form in order for Drop of Doom to stay running. It's like, okay, even if they went through what's called a major modification from the state and they said, we want to keep Superman open, or we want to keep Superman's tower there so we can keep Lex Luthor's Drop of Doom running. Well, they need the engineering to sign off on that. Well, I don't know if you've noticed Superman's tower, but it's not just a tower standing straight up in the air. It's actually not parallel with each other. One side of it towards the back, if this were the back side, one side's leaning forward like that. So it kind of looks like an oddball spike. And at the base, it's not standing straight up in the ground either. That tower is actually off-centered a little bit with the curve at the bottom. So it's actually not standing straight up and down. It probably needs the rest of that structure to hold it up there. Well, once they decommission Superman, take that down, that's probably going to take down Lex Luthor's Drop of Doom. Where am I going with this? I know. Watching Kingda Ka come down, at the base of Kingda Ka was the old Kilimanjaro's Drop, whatever it was, ride. Underneath there is the cable, there's the spool section where all the spools were kept for each one of those drops, for each one of those vehicles, right? That spool assembly is a very, very expensive assembly, and its hydraulic drive and everything else, that is a lot of money sitting down there. That spool assembly can't get messed up if they were to reuse it, but they're leaving it there. It's not going to come out then, if that's the case. They're going to leave it there, and just it's getting torn out, which tells me that it's not being used for spare parts. They're not going to send the spare parts to another park, Six Flags Magic Mountain, and send that stuff there and say, okay, well, here's a bunch of spare parts for your ride. Some of the vehicle might have gone there. Some of the restraint cylinders and things like that might have gone there. But the big stuff, the big components, they're just going to throw them away. So it's like, okay, that is calling out that that won't be used in the future. Now, it might just be because they're two completely different systems, because was 3 towers and Lex Luthor's Drop of Doom is only 2, right? It might be something along those lines. It's like, nope, completely unique system. They're just going to throw the thing away. Okay, but some of that writing's on the wall. I do believe Superman the Escape from Krypton over at Magic Mountain is on its way out. I also, speaking of this, Kingda Ka, New Jersey. I don't have a good feeling about that park in general, because they say we're going to take down all this stuff and we're going to put in this new ride there in a couple of years. Okay, got it. But this is also the type of thing that happens right before they get rid of a park too. You can take stuff down and say, oh yeah, we're gonna take this and we're gonna move this over here. We're clearing out all this space, and then the next thing you know, at the end of 2025, it's, oh, we had this project get set back. So actually that big groundbreaking ride that was going in its spot actually won't happen until 2027. And we're going to take out 2 more rides this year. But so then people will say, well, no, they said they were going to invest a bunch of money. I know corporations say lots of things. Are they trying to mislead you? No. They're probably not trying to mislead you, but do they just make mistakes? Yeah, they do. Can they just say things and say, well, actually that didn't pan out. That's not the way we're going to. Yeah, they can do that too. Do they have to run everything by the park enthusiasts and get a green light and thumbs up about it? No, they don't. In fact, it only makes sense to the shareholders. What do the shareholders care about? Dollars and cents, the money coming through their hands. Whatever, we want to get rid of Kingda Ka. You know what that decision was on the back end? Did we get more money? Yes, we do. It's like, whew, gone. Just like that. Bye, Kingda Ka. We got more money. Yay. It happens with corporations all the time. Everything is dollars and cents driven. When you have a combined amount of debt that the 2 corporations had when they put their heads together, it's like that is something to look at. Now you have this big wad of debt that you have to get rid of. That debt did not go away when the 2 corporations went together. And also at the same token, their shareholders, that all that stuff combined as well, their prices went all wacky, so they're trying to keep the shareholders intact and make sure that they're not going to go away either, because they want people to continue investing money. They don't want the stock to plummet, and they don't want the whole thing to go under. One of the decisions to merge together had to have been, look, if we keep fighting this out, we're both going to lose. We're probably both going to declare bankruptcy, and we're both going to go under. But if we combined our stuff together, we can make it, because we'll be working together. And they said, yes, let's do that. They joined forces. They still have to get rid of all their debts. Otherwise, they won't make money. So they need to start trimming the fat. They need to start getting rid of all this extra stuff. What's the first thing we do? Shut down bad actors. All those rides that are saying, like, this isn't adding anything to our front gate admission, we can't sell it or anything else, get rid of it. We don't want it anymore. Then what's the next thing they do? All of this staffing, all these staffing that has all this stuff. Six Flags typically runs really lean on staffing. Cedar Fair used to run really heavy on staffing. So when they put the two together, it looks like both of our models work. We put the two together, and what do we find out? We have too many people. We got to start getting rid of people. They got rid of engineers. They got rid of staffing. They got rid of rides. What's the next step? Staffing, engineers, rides. What else is there? I mean, what do you get rid of in that model? Whoop, property. Oh, that's right. We can get rid of property. So now let's start looking at how many parks per state are there. And we're going to take some of those areas where we have two mediocre performing parks, and we're now going to shoot one of them in the foot and take it out. And then that will actually drive everyone to the other park. Now, if they were smart about it, they're going to shut down the other park completely. Shut it down and tear it out. They're going to tear out the park, and then those people are forced to go to the other side and go to that park. They're forced to do it, right? Northern California, where I worked, there were several amusement parks there. They're going to take out California's Great America. Well, all those people that were going to California's Great America are now free because they aren't going to go there anymore. So they're either going to have to go further north to Discovery Kingdom, or they're going to have to go further south to Magic Mountain. It's got to go to one of those two areas, right? I'm not worried about Knott's Berry Farm because it's so close to Disneyland. Disneyland bleeds people off onto Knott's Berry Farm and vice versa. So Knott's is fine down there. Northern California, between Discovery Kingdom and California's Great America, had not only its fuel to go was the land it's sitting on. The land it's sitting on is worth so much money. It makes way more sense to remove that than it does to try to fix it back up. Or I shouldn't say fix it back up, to try to keep it running, because the park is probably losing money hand over fist trying to keep that land right there. All those businesses around California's Great America, once that land is gone, once that land is up for grabs, they will just go in there and continue to build more buildings right in that area. That land is worth way more with buildings sitting on top of it, especially to the city and state, than it is with an amusement park sitting. People can go to Discovery Kingdom. People can go to Magic Mountain. What's eventually going to happen is everyone will go to Magic Mountain, because I can't see Discovery Kingdom lasting that long up there either, because that's one of those things that anywhere that has animals associated with it, that's not long either. Now, once you get rid of the animals, that's the big question. Once you get rid of the animals, what's left there? Is it a good amusement park to have there, or is it a bad amusement park to have there? So at Great Adventure, they might not close the park down. There's a good chance they won't close the park down, but there is a good chance that they will sell off the animal side of it. And they're like, the animal side is going to go to a private organization now, no longer associated with the park. They'll probably work together, discounts, admission, that sort of stuff, but it's no longer going to be Six Flags operated. In fact, I'd probably see every single place that had any sort of animals go that way. It's either split or it's gotten rid of completely, because nobody wants to do that. The animals cost a lot of money to maintain, and they don't draw a lot of people in. Zoos draw a lot of people in, but you know what? Zoos and that sort of stuff come with all sorts of other problems. They're their own entity by themselves. They don't want that. So they want to get back to rides. They want to increase their margins of profit, which means they're going to be getting rid of some of that fluffy stuff. We spend, $20 million a year to keep up a scenic boat ride in 3 parks. It's like, yeah, we don't need that. Cut it out. Get rid of it. We don't care about it. It doesn't help our bottom line. People say, well, it's not all about the shareholders just having all the money. It's like, well, actually, yeah, it is. That's what keeps the gates open. That's what keeps the business running. So they have to keep that stuff running. If they don't keep the shareholders happy, shareholders leave, that means the stock price plummets, which means that they can't get loans for new rides. They can't buy anything because no one will be an investor. No one will back them. So they have to keep it going or they're going to drown out and die. Sad situation, but nobody wants it. So we look at all the parks around and you can start to see, with this information, you can just start to see all of the little nuances here and there. It's like, that's probably going to go away. That's probably going to go away. Watch your staffing levels go away. Watch parks slowly start to get rid of things. Slowly starting to get rid of things isn't necessarily a bad thing, because when parks slowly start to get rid of things, that means they might be replaced by something else. If parks slowly get rid of things and then they don't get new stuff in, that's a red flag. That's like, okay, you're getting rid of stuff but not putting anything back in. That means you're on the cutting board and you're about to get the axe probably. People at Great Adventure is like, well, they put in Kid Flash, or not Kid Flash. They put in Flash right there and it never opened right before they took Kingda Ka out of there. It's like, yes, but new rides are really funny that way, because once they have a prototype ride like that up and running to where it's like, yep, this is our new thing, it's going to work just fine. It also doesn't take much to relocate that ride either, because it's actually a small footprint ride. Not much infrastructure needed to move something like that. They could just remake the footprint somewhere else, take all that steel down, and put it over there. Now, they have said they're making sizable investments with that park, and I believe that up front. It's like, okay, yeah, is anything going to happen to Great Adventure? I'm honestly on the 50-50 shot. But I also can't speculate to say, like, yes, it's going to go away for sure, because honestly, when the companies are in this sort of like turmoil right now where they're trying to increase their bottom line and stuff, every year it's going to drastically change, right? After 2025 season, the 2025 season is going to paint what happens to the 2026 season. They might be running headlong into one thing, and then after the 2025 season, they might stop dead in their tracks toward that and just be like, whoop, nope, we don't want to do that. And they back out of it. Say, nope, never mind, we're done. We're done with that. Let's cut bait. Let's throw the park away. They got two chances when they throw a park away: dismantle it completely and then ship the parts and pieces out to other things. These are typically what happens to your really small parks that have lots of clone rides. The parts and pieces go out to other parks. Sometimes rides are sold off, not that often. And then sometimes parks are sold to another company. There might be another company out there. Palace, I know Merlin's been having lots of turmoil with their stuff as well. But sometimes these people just go to another park and they say, hey, would you guys be interested in purchasing the entire park? And maybe they would. But they also have to look out for their bottom line again. Yes, okay. So if they have two mediocre parks right next to each other and they say, well, we don't want that competition, so we're going to throw away one park, and you have a mediocre park left over. If someone else buys that other one and starts installing big capital in there, you've now just killed your mediocre park. It's dead, because now everyone will go to that other park, spend all the money there. Your park is now dead in the water. So it's kind of one of those cutthroat competition things. It's like, well, if we have two mediocre parks right next to each other, we're going to completely dismantle, out of Park A and B. We're going to completely dismantle Park B and move its parts out to other places around there, move its rides out there, and we're just going to throw the property away until no one wants it, no one wants to reuse it or anything. That way that first park goes from a mediocre park to more of a thriving park, and it can build at that point. Water parks, we've seen those before, get shuffled off, get sold off. Water parks are very profitable when they're sold off in whole. You can't part and piece them out of there, because most of the time that stuff is destroyed once you take it apart. So water parks can be sold off and they can operate on their own, and then sometimes the corporation might opt to buy them back. But water parks don't make a ton of money, so it's not like a gold mine that the park's sitting on top of. So those are all tricks used to widen the margins and make the parks look more financially appetizing to the investors, which is where that money is going to be coming back in. So that's where I'm coming from on this video. It's not so much just wild speculation. You could speculate as to which park is safe, which one's not, what's going to go, which rides are safe, which ones aren't. Your heavy hitters sometimes are safe, where it's like, oh, X2, they pump a ton of money into that and its throughput's low and its engineering costs are high, but it might be a safe ride. because it's definitely nowhere near the way like Superman the Escape is. Superman the Escape, I would say, is as good as Torn Out at this point. Probably going to take Drop of Doom along with it. But then some of your older rides are safe, Woody's, old Woody's classics and things like that. They don't take much to maintain and operate. So a lot of times those can get a little nostalgia with them, and those can be advertised and upsold. So those things are safe a lot of times from these big corporate hatchets that come through here. But again, my experience is coming from going through a bankruptcy with this company before. And these were some of the things that happened that you have to look at and look at in whole when everything starts going south on you. Because even though the merger was a good thing, that they still have to trim the fat out, otherwise they will sink and they will go under. And then you'll have all these parks with no one to financially back them, and then you could start really losing a lot of parks out there, which would not be good by any means, the situation. I think that's about it for this video. Topic's a nasty topic, but if you got anything that you want to put out there, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I know a lot of people are going to be saying this ride, that ride, and I don't have lots of input on that stuff. So I know one of the big comments, people are going to like, well, do you think this ride is safe? There's no, honestly, take a coin. Is it safe? I don't know. But, that's up to the park. That's up to the corporation, because the park may say, yes, we want to keep that for sure. And the corporation might be like, nope, we're not going to do that. It doesn't make the money. It doesn't draw the people. It's not something we can advertise. And sometimes they do just want to get rid of stuff because it's like, hey, we've got this other really big project coming in right behind it that's going to make this park golden again. And they need to clear out some space for it. So sometimes it's not all doom and gloom. Don't worry about it. You just have to say, well, there's a bigger plan in place that I don't know about. So lots of speculation here, some history, some lessons learned in this video as well. I'm Ryan the Ride Mechanic. Stay off the air gates.